Today, I'm talking to Gregg Metcalf of JLL. Gregg is based in Atlanta and not a broker who sells homes. He is a commercial broker and representing companies leasing office space. Gregg is on the show today to share with us opportunities for residential agents through commercial agents. A broker for over 20 years, Gregg started by representing landlords, first of residential multifamily, and soon after, landlords of office buildings. This led to the opportunity that he took in 2003 to take on the role of a developer in commercial real estate of office and industrial space. As a developer, he was also a landlord and didn't just gain insight, but experienced and knows exactly how landlords make decisions. This led to the beginning of his great success today. As the market turned in the Great Recession of 2007, 8, 9, his new path was clear. In 2010, he began representing the tenants who lease office spaces from the landlords he so well understood. Gregg now represents corporations such as CohnReznick, a top accounting firm in the world, and many others, for whom he represents office leases across the country and the globe. Not to be left out, he led and represented the relocation of Mercedes to Atlanta in 2015. Today, he and I talk about how to tap into opportunities with commercial brokers, from basic referrals to major corporate relocations. Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf Podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. This podcast was created for real estate agents across the country to come together, sharing ideas to take your, their, and our business to the next level. All right, everybody, it's the Jere Metcalf Podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. And today we have on the show Gregg Metcalf, a commercial real estate broker, specifically an office tenant rep with Jones Lang LaSalle. Gregg, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jere. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. So everybody, you might have noticed Gregg is not a residential agent, which is typical on the show. He is in commercial. We're going to tap a little bit into his business development. And I really brought Gregg on the show because he's got a lot to share on how we can develop business and when clients, knowing what commercial brokers do, and that it's a very specialized industry, and also on the aspect of relocation from individuals to large companies. So that being said, Gregg, tell us a little bit about what you do, and we're going to get into how you got into what you do. But what do you do exactly?
So I actually do a combination of things. First, I handle a lot of local business in Atlanta for local Atlanta clients, as well as businesses that are around the world that have offices here. And then in addition to that, I assist big corporations with site selection, mostly across the country, in some cases around the world. And that could be for call centers or corporate headquarters.
So more specifically, I believe you represent tenants looking for office space and office space. I
represent the businesses occupying the office space. A lot of folks, example, driving around Atlanta may look at the sign on a building that says BB&T, or it may say Wells Fargo. That's not the company or the bank that owns the building. The building is just tenanted by BB&T or by SAP or whoever's name may be on the building. 98% of the time, the business is leasing the space. They don't own the building. And I represent the business in negotiating that lease and also determining which building to go to in the case of Atlanta, or often or sometimes in which city or which market to go to.
So that's pretty relevant to us in that we have a lot of clients who are, especially in luxury real estate, representing executives who run companies. We are representing executives making decisions on companies relocating. So to break it down for a minute, as a residential agent, I get a lot of requests. Hey, I've got a client who needs a commercial broker. Who do you know? Who's good?
So
that's not really enough information to know who's good.
Definitely not. And that kind of goes to the whole concept of commercial agent, right? What is a commercial agent? A lot of folks will use that loosely, and there's a vast difference. A commercial agent could be labeling an industrial broker who does, large industrial leases, a retail broker who does a nail salon. It could be vast. So the first thing you want to do when you have information or an opportunity for referral is understand what it is. Is it retail? Is it land? Is it industrial? Is it office? And quite frankly, in most of the primary and secondary markets, the commercial brokers, the commercial agents will only focus on one category and one category only. When you start getting to tertiary or rural areas, you'll find folks like myself that they have to be the jack of all trades. They'll be retail, they'll do office, they'll do industrial because there's just not enough within the market. But if you're in any major metro, you really want to be sure you're reaching out to the right person as it relates to the specialty of what the requirement is. In my case, that's office users, which is probably a good matchup for the residential world because it means more higher paid employees in most cases.
So as a residential agent, we get a client, they need a commercial broker. Oftentimes when they call and ask for a commercial broker, we know they might need one. The questions just to review to ask are, we need to know what industry. Are they looking for retail? Is this a land site? Is this
industrial, office? And are they purchasing or are they leasing? Correct.
And are they a tenant or are they a landlord?
Correct. Is it an investment and they want to be a landlord, or are they an end user and they want to be a tenant? So investors can be buying a building or buying a land and developing. Typically, they're already, if they're an established investor, they're already working with commercial agents. The more likely that you would encounter is going to be a C-suite person. And in that case, they're usually doing what most corporations.
When you say C-suite person, like we just know what that is.
CFO, CEO, COO.
I thought you meant like what kind of building.
Right. No, the leaders of the business. Right. But they'll usually be the decision maker or part of the decision process, depending on the size of the corporation, in locating office space. And again, they're more often they're looking to lease space than they are looking to buy or build space.
Which I think a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think, I think you said earlier, when you drive by a building and you see the name of a business on it, you think the business owns it. That's actually because they negotiated that in the office. Somebody like you, very often you in Atlanta and in other markets around the country, negotiated that sign to be on the building with the owner, and this the company leasing the space.
Sure. So like in Alliance Center here in Buckhead, I negotiated the SAP sign on the building, and my brother negotiated the Novella sign on the building. So we sort of have the Metcalf grouping on one building. But as you go around the city and you see business names on the building, there is about a 98% chance that they don't own that building. I can think of only two in Atlanta that they actually own the building. Georgia Power and the Coca-Cola Company own their assets. But most of the other buildings in Midtown, downtown, Buckhead, you see those signs on the building, and they're institutionally owned or they're owned by a publicly traded REIT. And the business that's in there whose sign is on the building was a business that someone like me represented in signing, often a 5, 7, or usually a 10-year lease to be within that building, which part of the negotiation is that free advertising up on top.
So I think so for our listeners, we've got a lot of residential agents going, why are we talking to a commercial guy that has the same last name as you? And the reason why is for a few things. I think for us, we've discovered, and we actually don't do this enough, but we have fallen into this naturally many times where you've got a client who has a need. And when you're the residential agent, you kind of learn a lot. You kind of become married to your client, probably more. I do probably more so than you do in your business. So we learn about a lot of their needs, a lot about what's going on in their life. And they need, for example, everybody knows second home markets. I know a lot of people who have homes in second markets, so we know brokers in those markets. But we also have clients, most of us, who are executives, owners of businesses and need a good broker for those businesses. But the question is, back to what we said, rather than going out and looking for a commercial broker, looking for that relationship to make sure that you're establishing more and more respect and truly being helpful to the client by making sure we know the right brokers and to introduce them and to ask the right questions. So let's say if you were a residential agent, what is your biggest advice on having clients who are executives, business owners, and what are the things to listen for and what are the things to ask them to make sure we're developing the best relationship? We're not representing them in the case of commercial, but when they come to us or we hear things, what are we looking for to make sure we are always valuable to them and getting them in front of the right people?
So if you're really looking to understand, often the mortgage representative is going to get into the weeds, and you guys don't have to. And what do you do, and how much do you get paid, right? But as you described earlier, you're always getting pretty intimate in understanding who your clients are and what they do. What is their business, and then what is their job function within that business? And in the luxury world that you're in, often you're running into an owner of a company, a principal, or a partner, any of those three for a smaller LLC type business, which, by the way, doesn't necessarily mean there's a smaller commercial transaction. Just in comparison to Fortune 500 corporations is the only reason I bring that up. But it's those titles and understanding if they're in any way a decision maker. And even it doesn't necessarily have to be a relocation of any sense. Usually I'm the one that will hear about or know about or be working on the relocation before it gets to your side. But you have the opportunity for a referral when you just understand that someone's the CEO of a company. That alone is an opportunity to connect to a commercial agent that can help and assist in the same way that you do. But only in locating or handling office space for them. And mind you, my world is not waiting for a lease to expire. It's assisting the client today, now, even if they're in the middle of a lease. Some examples might be, I had a client that had 5 years remaining on their lease in a big building in Midtown and had a good relationship with them. And I knew that the building was trading hands to a new buyer. And I knew who the new buyer was, and I knew that client needed to have less space. It was in a downturn in the economy during the financial crisis. And I was able to negotiate a space reduction for him and save him a lot of money. So it's knowing those leaders. And in that case, it was a principal in an architectural firm who happened to be the lead of the firm that particular year. But again, it's knowing your client and what they do.
Exactly. And also, I think an interesting story, I don't know if you can share it with us, is you've had the opposite happen where I think you've had clients who needed to expand or wanted to be in a different location and thought they were caught in a lease for a few more years, and you knew how to negotiate them into. Sure. What can you tell us about that as a great example?
A great example is in my business, it's all about retention and recruitment for the business. It's the most valuable thing to a business is its employees. They're the number one resource, human capital. And in this particular case, it was an accounting firm that was located in a central perimeter submarket. And it was really also during the financial crisis. And accounting firms really recruit heavily.
I think it was to Paul's 2008, was it?
2008.
Just to like really hone in on how bad it was, but keep going.
It was actually 2009. It had gotten worse. So it was end of 8, beginning of 9, and accounting firms, their whole drive is the proper recruitment and pull of the young talent. So it's the millennial attack back then is what the focus was, and this accounting firm had offices in central perimeter, which today is I guess kind of urban edge. But certainly back then it was not. And you really, if you wanted to attract the young talent, you needed to be on MARTA and you needed to be in Buckhead or you needed to be in Midtown, one or the other. And this group had a long lease remaining, and their current advisor told them, you're going to have to wait till the lease expires. And from doing some other transactions in the Buckhead market, we were able to really figure out how to relocate them by way of negotiating an amazing deal with almost 3 years of free rent because of the financial crisis. And then stack on top of that, we were able to backfill and sublet their existing space. Ended up being an ability to recruit, relocate, and almost a $4.5 million save.
So that's just a great example, I think, for everybody, keeping our ears open when clients are in situations. There are always opportunities to introduce them to people. When we introduce them to the right people, not just the commercial broker. That's probably one of my favorite stories, by the way. Another question is, we get a lot of, well, I'm going to pause because we didn't fully get the answer to the one question. In meeting our clients, because you win business, you win this kind of business all the time. We're in the business as residential agents of winning residential business, but we're also in the business of establishing trust, rapport, and building relationships within that. What are things, because our clients do so often ask us for a commercial broker, what are the big things to listen for, to know without exhausting them or ourselves or getting them still with the right people? What are the big things to listen for and questions that you suggest to ask them, if you could sum that up?
As it relates to
introducing clients to commercial brokers,
whether
they're asking for it or whether they're listening for it.
Sure. I think it's just an understanding. It's an understanding of their business. And look, as you know, everybody's number one favorite topic to talk about, as long as they know they're not doing it by your questioning, is about themselves, right? And so when you ask somebody, well, what do you do, or what's the nature of your business, or why are you moving to Atlanta, or why are you relocating to this particular area? Where's your office in your perspective? Because that's probably a question you're always asking, because if someone's assessing where am I going to live, often it will have to do with, at least schools, obviously, many family reasons, but then there's the business component. It's where is your office and how's that commute going to look? And that's the immediate instant snapshot of, okay, your office is in Midtown or your office is in Buckhead, and they're shopping for a home in Brookhaven maybe. The reality is that, suddenly we learn if they're in an A+ market, Buckhead, Midtown, Central Perimeter, and they're shopping for a $2 or $3 million house, there's a good chance that this person is probably a business leader who is also driving the decision process for office space. So that's the easy find is, what's your commute to your office?
Or if their office is the new salon they're opening.
Well, if the office is a new salon,
then we need to get him a good retail broker.
Then you need to talk to a good retail broker. Exactly. So it's the nature of the business too.
And a lot of our clients are investing. They want to invest in multifamily. They want to invest in office space. They want to invest in medical centers. And so honing in on the brokers that we know specialize in those things, because there's a big difference in what each of those industries are. And I think in our industry as residential agents, in most markets, not all of them, we have a contract that's like the contract. In your business, they all look different and they're all written by a different attorney.
Every single lease is 100% negotiated and never looks anything like a prior lease with the same landlord in the same building.
That's fun.
It is actually kind of.
So if you like to read, what about, there's always, I remember when the word got out that Mercedes was coming to Atlanta, all the brokers wanted to figure out how to get that relocation deal. What comes to mind when I tell you that?
The ship had already sailed when everybody thought that they wanted to be in front of that or get part of that. And the reason is the nature of any corporate relo, and there's only one exception I can think of over the past 30 years, which was Amazon. But in any corporate relo, it's a must to keep quiet. And you will see in the paper often economic development talking about a project that has a cool, funny name. And in Atlanta, Mercedes was called Project Eagle. And that's what it was known as for the duration of the project. Mercedes was very different than many other corporate relos in that it was really fast. The leadership at Mercedes was able to react, move quick, and they did everything they said they were going to do. Often we have a little more bureaucracy with other corporations, and the process can be as much as 2 to 3 years as that decision is made. With Mercedes, it was from start to finish about 5 months.
So go ahead. So here's the question. I'm, as a residential agent who's always interested in learning, I mean, a lot of residential agents and brokers are interested in learning and how to get in front of relo. So the question is, okay, like nobody knew, but you knew, somebody knew. How did the first people that know?
So the first people that know are typically the consultants and the brokers like myself that are representing the company in the process, and we sign some non-disclosure agreements that we could end up in jail. I'm obviously exaggerating, but they're extreme. We don't want to violate them, and so we're not going to talk, and it's going to stay quiet.
It's clear you're not going to tell us when you know, but before you know, how do you know? How do you get in front of this?
Before you know, if you've got a relationship particularly with an office broker, we're going to need your help, right? It's one thing I mentioned earlier. To a corporation or a business, particularly in the office world, and really probably in every business, whether it's retail or in the industrial world or in office, the human capital is the absolute most important component of a business. It's the most expensive component of a business. So when we assess office rates across the country, $30 a foot is kind of a standard. $30 a foot per year is what the rental rate is for a typical office lease, and that's very generalizing across the country. Well, $300 a foot is typically what employees cost in office space. So if we're going to make a mistake or spend more or want to have savings, we're going to want to do it under that human capital component. And office space is purely a container for culture, right? It's where the business happens. It's where things come together. And so our focus and smart businesses, which is I like to think all the ones that I work with are, their focus is going to be retention and recruitment and employees. And that's where you come in. In my situation, it was a secret project. It had narrowed to 3 cities. And once it narrowed to 3 cities, we had a team tasked with deciding that process, which three cities. And I won't bore you with all the details of how we got to those 3. But in each of those 3 cities, there was a 3-day tour. And it was day 1, the CEO, all he cared about, all he wanted to know, and the HR director, by the way, as well, was where were his employees going to live? What kind of an environment would they live in based off of the salaries that they were paying? And as you can imagine, that vastly differs when we go, say, from a suburban New Jersey market to Atlanta, to Raleigh, to Dallas. It's vastly different. And often part of what we're doing is demonstrating to them quality of life within a market. So not only are we helping them decide on, well, which building or which land are we going to build a building on within a market, but we're helping decide, well, which city. And we're matching the city not because of the buildings and that type of thing. It's more of the quality of life, which is all about what you guys do. It's all about the residential world when it comes to that.
So what is it that causes a company to relocate in the first place?
Taxes. No, I mean that's one of them. It's what we were just discussing.
People
it's quality
too, by the way, and their homes.
Right. It's quality. It's quality of life. It's quality of life in general for individuals that the businesses are trying to recruit, as well as the quality of life for the operations of a business. You look first and foremost at quality of life. If I'm in the Northeast and we have really, really bad weather and I pay really, really high taxes, as an individual, I might want to reconsider, my 3-bedroom, 2-bath that's built in 1950 that I paid $800,000 for on 1/8 of an acre lot, and come down to Atlanta and look at suburban Atlanta and see what I can get for that, or even look in Brookhaven or other submarkets within Atlanta that are far higher quality. Other things that are going to be considered as the nature of the business, and there are certain states and certain cities that are taxing business to death. And we're seeing what's happening as a result of that. We have a huge migration of business to the Sun Belt. So, what we're seeing a lot of is particularly the Northeast in New York and Connecticut and New Jersey, as well as what we're seeing on the West Coast with California. California, we're seeing the flight to often to Dallas and to Phoenix and to Las Vegas. And in the Northeast, we're seeing a lot of movement further south, call it Charlotte, Atlanta, Raleigh, even Florida, Tampa, that type of thing.
And Atlanta. Don't forget Atlanta.
Oh, yeah, absolutely,
Right.
Atlanta. Well, especially when we've got the most connected airport in the world.
I think that was a big part of the Mercedes decision, was it not?
Sure is an easy flight to Germany, and there's a bunch of them. So, yes, Atlanta, when it was narrowed down to Dallas, Raleigh, and Atlanta, I think the airport was a huge impact in the decision, as was the fact that their Sprinter production was in South Carolina and their SUV production was in Alabama.
So probably in a lot of people's minds right now, especially everybody who listens to this soon after the recording and maybe long after the recording, is what do you think the coronavirus is? How is that affecting? Like, we see how right now it's people just want to move, but how is that affecting your industry in the office space and that kind of relates to our clients as well?
Your business is, I think, probably being impacted in a very positive way. My business is not necessarily completely negative. There's a lot of knee-jerk reaction, very different, but very similar to when we had 911 occur. In 911, I'll give you an example of a mutual friend of ours that is a big Scott Panzer in New York. With JLL, represented a huge financial institution that knee-jerked because of 911, as they should have, but they were extreme, and they said, we're out of Manhattan, never going back, and they relocated. I want to say it was suburban New Jersey, but I might be wrong on that. But they left Manhattan, and they left and wanted to sublet their space in Manhattan, and two and a half years later, they had to go back to Manhattan. They had to go back to retention and recruitment, what we were talking about earlier. People wanted to be in the city. They wanted to be part of that. And so that was the nearest thing to the coronavirus I can probably compare to in my lifetime. Coronavirus, what we're seeing is the knee jerk of we want to get out of the city as well. We want to get away from having to be packed into a subway with a bunch of people or be in the sardine can of an apartment within the city, that type thing. And I think we'll see some of that. In fact, Atlanta and some of the Sunbelt cities that I was mentioning earlier, or some of even the smaller cities, say a Nashville or a Greenville in the South might benefit, because some companies are saying, we're getting out of the big city completely. With technology, we can work from anywhere. We've learned that even further with coronavirus, because we learned that. We were able to work outside of Atlanta as a result of that. But generally speaking, we're hearing that, okay, we think we're going to need less space because people can work remotely. We're going to hotel, but we think we need more space because we need to build out our space that people are more socially distanced. And you hear a lot of talking heads talk about, well, it's going to wash and it'll be about the same. I think the net is we are going to see a reduction in office space, but not nearly to the extent that we're seeing often in the papers. And what I would probably reference to that, or the why, or the example, Microsoft just signed for almost 550,000 feet in the middle of the coronavirus in Midtown Atlanta at Atlantic Station. Google locked in 400,000 feet in the middle of the coronavirus at 1150 in West Midtown. Facebook signed a large lease. The list goes on.
So why do you think that is, though? Why are these bigger companies signing these big leases in the middle of coronavirus?
Right now, their stocks happen to be on fire, and I think they're thinking long term, as leases are. Again, a big lease like that is a 10 or 15-year lease. Certainly, they're going to be good corporate citizens, and they're going to look out for their employees, their people. They're not going to make them go to the office, anything of that degree. But I think a big part of it is just that forward thinking, and part of it could also be, although I know Microsoft got bigger in the middle of the coronavirus, so part of that could be somewhat of the idea that we're leaving some of these major markets, the Chicagos and the New Yorks and the San Franciscos and the denser environments, and now going to the secondary markets and even the tertiary markets. Nashville has had some big leases recently as well.
So curious, I think in our industry in residential real estate, we're seeing a lot of our closings are getting postponed. Things aren't happening on time. Some of that is we're busy, but some of that, the word is, this is, that some of the accountability of the people usually working in the office for the lenders and the closing attorneys are working virtually from home, and potentially that might be affecting accountability, affecting productivity, affecting ability to communicate quickly to get things done. Combination of those. Are you hearing about any of that? I'm just curious, because all of this is funny how it kind of interconnects and affects all of us in the residential business.
You mean in terms of the ability to do business and the lack of, or the reduction in collaboration, if you will?
Well, just is people working from home, is that still working? Are they going to start? Do you think offices are going to start trying to have more people work from home, or are they finding out that's not working, is working?
So we've been advising businesses long before the coronavirus that their usage of office space is it's extensive and it's more than what they need. And by example, I have a client that we did a utilization study. And by the way, so I represent one-off transactions in Atlanta, but then I also represent businesses worldwide. So I have 4 clients that I handle all of their space in their portfolio, their lease administration, everything. And in the case of one client, we did a utilization study, which is essentially counting butts that are in seats every hour on the hour for a six-week period of time. And what we learned is that their utilization of their desks, their cubes in their offices was at about 40%, which means they probably really didn't need as much office space if they could hotel or, and have a ratio of desk sharing. And so as a result of that, that particular client, we've reduced their footprint significantly.
But how do you measure something like that?
Well, there were sensors in seats, card access going in and out of the space itself. So we knew if an employee was present or an employee wasn't present. And then we knew if that employee was sitting at their desk or if they were sitting in a conference room. We actually have the technology and the sensors to
okay, I'm dying to know. Did these employees know that y'all were doing this?
No. They
That's relevant too, because it
is relevant.
Authentic.
The executives,
yeah.
so the leaders in particular offices, are very protective of their office space and don't want to lose or give it up because they have the perception that they need it. And then when we conduct a study like this, they realize, well, it's just Friday. That's why, the office only has, 25 out of the 100 seats occupied, and a lot of people are out on Friday, that type of thing. And it's like, well, no, you have a large sales force, and we're glad they're not in the office. They're out selling. They're where they're supposed to be. That type of thing. I mean, if it's a call center, obviously you need a seat for every butt. But for most businesses, there's a lot of wasted space already, and so over the years, the big 4 accounting firms are the ones that started to figure this out 10 years ago. I mean, E&Y, KPMG, Deloitte, PwC, all began to realize this, and it's because they're in the consulting business, and they were spending a lot of time in client space. And that, I should say 20 years, probably not 10, but over the past 10 years, really corporate America is figuring it out. And, nobody needs to have a palatial office. There's not a lot of collaboration that occurs when there's walls. And so the new workplace strategy of a lot of business means not necessarily a much smaller footprint, because now we're using more space for collaboration, and that equates to social hubs as opposed to just the old drab, boring break room. It's more than a break room. It's combined with conference areas, television screens, social type things, whether it's ping pong or whatever. I mean, look, it's an adaptation from the retention and recruitment and the competitiveness that we've seen in the technology sector, right? Think of Apple and Google and how they work. Everybody's read about those type environments. Well, corporate America is starting to compete with that as well. Not to the extent as the tech companies, but certainly.
Well, it sounds like it also is conducive to productivity.
It is.
Environments
Absolutely.
where people are productive.
And would you rather get an extra 10% on your $300 a foot in that productivity, or would you rather save 10% on your $30 a foot of office space?
So summing this all up, and then I'm going to do my final three with you, even though this interview's been a little bit different. But summing this up for residential agents and all brokers in the industry is, number one, in our business, there's a lot of opportunity for referrals between one another on this show to other markets, but also to other industries. As we know, we often have agents or clients asking us to do commercial deals or for commercial brokers. We need to remember, what is the industry? Industrial, retail, office. And are they buying, or are they leasing? Are they on the landlord side, or are they on the tenant side? Anything else to add to that before I touch on the other thing?
No, I think that's critical. It's knowing what their use is for the space. Are they an end user? And then what is the space for? Office, retail?
Oh, how big too, by the way?
How big is important too, right? So,
right.
So 1,000 square foot lease is kind of like a $40,000 home purchase to us. And, 100,000 square foot lease may be more akin to,
and it depends on the firm. There are different firms that specialize even in different sizes. Now, the other, I think, really exciting question, just to sum it back up for everybody, is there's so much interest in, I want to get in front of these corporate relos. Now, I know you really well. We'll explain why later for those of you who don't know. But your immediate answer to that is, well, that's not happening. However, that happened for me. I got in front of the Mercedes relo because of my relationship with you. What is a good way for brokers, if they really are interested in relo and getting in front of that? Not that is not, what is the avenue, big picture, to help residential agents understand? Is that something I can tap into or not? And if I did, what would it really take?
We're always in a scenario like that, which, by the way, in our day-to-day, for me, that's a every other year type transaction or every 3-year type transaction. When a corporation decides to make a physical move, referral opportunities go beyond just that. So keep that in mind. And I think it's just a relationship with a commercial broker that can either handle the requirement or know where to help you go in the event it's not what she does or he does. And so that goes back to knowing the answers already. Is it a retail requirement? Is it an industrial requirement? Is it an office requirement? When we look at an entire corporation relocating and the secrecy that's surrounded by it, if you have a relationship with a local broker that focuses and does business in that world, which is primarily the office world, but which has all of the jobs that brings all of the folks that are buying homes, that individual will probably come to you and ask for your help, and maybe not fully disclose why they need your help. Typically, they may say, hey, I need to understand better the neighborhoods in Atlanta. You guys have information on that, don't you? That's probably a question that should pique your interest heavy, that they're likely working on a project where a business is surveying and studying multiple markets across the country. And again, they're likely under an NDA, but if you drill them enough, you might get out of them that there is a requirement. They're likely not going to tell you who it is. And it's not necessary that you need to know who it is. It's more of what type of business and how many people and what type of pay is happening. And that gives you ability to sort of profile what the opportunity could be on the residential side. One thing I've learned is from HR in a lot of these businesses, they do have relationships with these relo companies. But I've also learned that you can have influence over those relo companies and how they allocate business between firms, city to city.
Exactly, which we have done in the past. Final three. Should we disclose yet? For those of you who don't know, this is my husband. It's share the last name. And who knows, knowing me, I may announce that in the intro or on social media. But I think it's thank you, Gregg, for being on the show, because this has been so insightful and I get so many questions. And now I've got this interview to send everybody to. But
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, final three first. Final three. Question number one. What book would you recommend, career or life and or otherwise, is a must read?
You're going to hate this.
Oh, no. Because I don't know what it's going to be.
I'm a big fan of Never Split the Difference.
Why would I hate that?
No, it's
That's
probably
my book.
one of your recommends.
Right.
That or the newest Dan Crenshaw book is probably the 2-1 hint kind of.
Right. And who introduced you to both of those books?
Pardon me? You did introduce me to both those books. Yes, you did.
Just saying.
Well,
okay.
Crenshaw, I introduced you to on a podcast.
But I got the book.
And you got the book, right?
I got the book and I sent it to you and had you listen to it. We're only halfway through it. Or no, I'm almost done. Are you almost done?
No, I'm only halfway through it.
It's really good. Never Split the Difference. How many times did you read it?
Not nearly as many as you. I think I've only read it probably 3 times, and I've only taken one class, and I think you've taken 3 or 4. So I'm behind you on that.
The workshop
but I've got you as a reference, so I'm good.
I got you into it. Notice how notice all the validation I'm looking for here. Maybe we should be worried anyway. So next question is, in your business, I mean, you've business development. We didn't even go back into, you were a landlord rep, and then you were a developer, and then you were a commercial tenant rep broker. You've been doing that for 12 years now? 10?
Tenant rep, or focused solely on tenant rep, just 11 years now.
11 years. Mm-hmm. So that being said, you've already won one of the top firms in the country, accounting firm. You have in other accounting firms, you brought Mercedes to Atlanta. I mean, you've done some really major deals and developed that business. What has been your biggest resource or tool and the ability to develop that high level business so quickly?
Customer service, pure customer service. In my business, a big portion, almost all, with the exception of one, all of my national business is a result of existing relationships referring me. It's definitely, I'm in a business where often there's the one-off cold caller that will crash in and make a deal, and that'll be the end of it. My world is all about relationships and being part of a company's culture. I love that I get to be involved in different types of businesses. It reminds me of when I was a kid and I asked my dad, well, what do you want to do? My dad told me, well, I wish I could do everything. I wish I could do every job for 6 months just to try it out. And I feel really fortunate because that's what my job is. I work with so many different businesses and get to experience what it's like to be with an automobile manufacturer. What is it like to be with an accounting firm? What is it like to be with a company that cleans sheets for hospitals? What is it like to be in the banking industry? All these different things, different businesses I get to represent is part of that. And it's a relationship.
So it's customer service and relationships. Oh,
yes. So you got to be good. You got to be good. Got to take care of them. And that's part of the relationship, right? I mean, it's the obvious in the business development. I would go so far as to say I don't have a single client who's not truly a friend. I'm friends with my clients. But
this is because I know so much about you, which I kind of do about all of our guests are somehow a friend. In the business of commercial real estate, it seems to me, and I could be wrong, but there's a lot of cold calling going on.
There's a lot of cold calling going on, absolutely.
And there was a cold calling contest in your office, and you won it.
Well, that was probably because of the team I was on. It probably wasn't attributed to me.
You may have forgotten, but I think you made 2 calls and you got the business of both of them. So your percentage rate. So
the terminology cold call is a little maybe misleading to what I do. I do what I call warm calls. I rarely call someone that I don't know. I can't stand it when people I don't know call me. Often I'll call somebody that I have some form of a connection to, whether it's a sphere of influence or whether it's a relationship that I already have. My favorite preference is to get introduced to somebody by somebody that already knows me, or at least have them send an email or call in advance saying that I'm going to be calling, and it gives me credibility. Or it's the connectivity of a sphere of influence. So for me, what that would mean is, my school that I went to, whether it's high school in Atlanta, or it's college, or a fraternity, or if it's your country club, or if it's your church. These are the spheres of influence. And so for me, my cold calls are warm. And that's
but I think the point I'm trying to make here that you're missing, husband Metcalf, is that for in your industry, cold calling is not uncommon. It's become a little more uncommon in our industry. It's common, but in the luxury business, I see it less and less. In your business, it's quite common, but a common theme on our show is our business is a profession. It's business development. It's relationship development. In your business, there's still a lot of success on cold calls, but you kind of stand out to me from what I know about your industry, that you are developing much less on cold calls and a lot more on relationships. Is that?
I don't take rejection well. So the cold calling process and look, the reality is one in 10, you're going to get a meeting and you may not even need the meeting. I'd rather not call 10 people. I'd rather call one or two, where I know enough about them and know enough about their situation or have a relationship of some sort where when I make that call, it's going to be a win. And in my business, the win could mean 3 years from now, 4 years from now, but I'll be here.
So back to the cold calling contest, people were making like 100 calls, 500 calls. You made 2, but you had 100%.
I had 100% because both of the calls I made were converted, and it was by pure research and relationship.
So last question. What is the one thing you hope we remember from this interview if we just forget everything else?
It's kind of cool to be interviewed by you. I've sat in the background during COVID and hearing all your interviews. For everybody to remember, I think the most important thing is everybody should have a commercial agent, and I'll be specific, an office agent, that they have a little bit of a relationship with, because the referrals go both ways, guys. When I make a transaction, I'm going to send the same kind of referral that you would get on referring a residential transaction. And so there's an opportunity for everybody to make money in that scenario. But on the same note, I can refer back to you. It's a two-way street. So it helps me help my clients to have a relationship with a residential agent, because I'm far more knowledgeable with respect to the residential communities. And Jerry will tell everybody that when we drive in neighborhoods, I don't know where I am and I'm lost if there's not an office building nearby. And it's very valuable going the other direction as well when you have a client that may have a problem in the office world that goes beyond just a lease expiration. And so what I would say to everybody is it's great that you all send referrals to each other in the residential world, but don't miss out on the opportunity to create the same kind of relationship in particularly the office world and an office tenant rep.
Well, and I think what's important to know about you, Gregg, is you do a lot of business most of your clients are national. So you've got brokers in other markets in Dallas and New York City. You've got brokers you're working with in other markets as well, that we actually make a lot of introductions to by chance from this show, which is kind of how this show evolved. We get phone calls from people in other markets looking for commercial brokers in Dallas, but we need to know what kind of commercial brokers so that we can get them in front of the right people.
Correct. And look, that connectivity, depending on who you're working with in your local market, it's there. So, Jerry, for you, it's obvious, right? I mean, I can help you in any market just because our footprint's international. 80% of what I do is outside of Atlanta. So there's lots of them
all over, and a few of them in other countries.
Lots of opportunity. Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Gregg, for that awesome insight. Everybody who hasn't met my husband yet, and now you have, it's official.
I'm clearly the winner in the relationship for sure. No doubt.
We like to compete. All right. Thanks for being on the show.
Love you, sweetie.
Bye.